Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Coming Distractions. I'm your host, Jay. I'm solo on this episode. I'll be discussing the 2017 Kathryn Bigelow directed film, Detroit.
I assume this is about what went on at the motel.
What happened at the motel?
Police was there. There was a lot of shooting. When I went in there, 3 kids had been killed.
Right before you got there.
It's a war zone out there.
They're destroying the city.
I'm just gonna assume you're all criminals. Change is coming.
You don't talk about this to anyone ever.
Detroit.
What happened?
Okay, so Detroit is basically a film that discusses the Algiers Motel incident that happened during the 1967 Detroit riots. The film is basically, in a word, one of the most intense films I've ever seen. I think Kathryn Bigelow does an amazing job of depicting what feels like almost like a war zone in a lot of ways during the riots. It's the filming is less tripod shot, which I thought was kind of interesting. It's more almost like handy cam, right in the action sort of situation. This feels to me to be Kathryn Bigelow's best film. I was a huge fan of The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30, which I think are tremendous war films and telling perspectives that she is far from, but being able to sort of whittle down these huge scoped films to really dive into the characters more than anything else. And Detroit is very similar to that. We get really standout, breakout performances by people like Algee Smith and John Boyega, who is absolutely tremendous in this film. Will Poulter, who plays sort of the racist, terrible cop, is really tremendous as well. I hated his guts from the very first time I saw him. The film is broken up into sort of 3 major set pieces or major acts. The first being the establishment of the Detroit riots, which was really great and terrifying. And it felt, like I said, it felt almost like a war film in a lot of ways, and a horror film. To me, as a black person, like there is a level that this film dives into that you cannot help but feel slightly anxious and nervous as it's going on. And the first act really dives into that. It really deals with this character that Algee Smith plays, who is a singer in the Dramatics. And as the Dramatics are getting ready to do like a big breakout performance, the riots sort of really kick off, and he finds himself in the middle of it, and then he makes his way to the Algiers Motel along with some friends of his. The second the second act is really focused on the Algiers Motel incident specifically, which, if you're not familiar with history, is basically what happens is there's gunfire that comes from the Algiers Motel, and the National Guard and the Detroit police go there, and these really corrupt cops and some people in the National Guard actually grab these 7 black guys and these 2 white women that are in this particular part of the hotel, and they harass them and abuse them and beat them, and some people are killed. And it's all to try to find this gun. And, you know, it's sort of amped up by the racial tensions of the riot that's going on as almost like another character in the film. The moments in the Algiers Motel are brutal and unrelenting and just sad and anger-inducing, and it does exactly what those scenes should do, which is show you the reality of that situation, the reality of police abuse. It's very much tied to what's going on nowadays. You can't help but see those moments unless you are really trying to be willfully ignorant. And I think the film does a good job of showing those things without beating you over the head and, you know, trying to make somebody feel guilty or what have you. It's not about that. It's just making you aware of the things that happened to what arguably were kids during the situation. One of the things I thought was really powerful is this movie is really super black and done by a white director. It doesn't apologize for the blackness of the film or the blackness of the characters. They are not, like black culture isn't stripped away to make them sort of generic characters just who happen to be black. They are black. There is a reason they're being harassed. It's because they are black. And to Kathryn Bigelow's credit, she never breaks away from that. And she pushes that to the absolute envelope and does it in a way that you can't help but care. And I think it does a good job of stripping away this sort of knee-jerk reaction of like, well, this isn't my story, so I don't have to care about it from, people who are not black. You should care about it because these are just innocent people. And there is this notion of like the portrayal of these people like, well, they're not perfect citizens, so maybe they deserve this kind of thing, which is an argument you hear as of late in sort of the media with any of these police shootings. And they examine that and they go into that and basically call bullshit on it, which is really powerful and really nice to see. Again, the second act is unrelenting. You do not get a break. There is no cut to a light comedic moment or cut to a lighter thing that, sort of gives the audience a break. When you're in that second act, you were there every minute of it. And again, because it's shot with a handy cam, it is right in your face. You almost feel like you are a character being pushed up against the wall by these cops and being harassed. Look, the sort of abusive characters like Will Poulter, who I mentioned earlier, they work so well because, well, in quotes, they work so well because Will Poulter's character specifically, who's the head cop, he is written in a way that the best villains in any movie or book are written, which is they think that they're the hero in the story, right? He often says, "Oh, I'm helping you people. I'm kind of the good guy of this." So he has that weird twisted logic that a lot of, or I would argue all races have, and they think that they're being the good guys. They're just telling the truth, right? That sort of bullshit mentality. And Bigelow was able to bring that out in him in a way that I thought was really powerful. Again, I thought John Boyega was so great as the security guard who was kind of wrapped up in all of this. And he's at the Algiers Motel, but he's not one of the people being harassed. Instead, he's sort of watching this happen, but he's kind of helpless, right? In the situation where here he is, this black security guard, and he's not done anything wrong. And he's trying to be sort of the go-between as these major racial issues are happening, but he can't ignore his blackness in those situations, even though some of these racist cops are trying to ignore that. Oh, you're just a good guy. You're one of the good ones type of thing. But his character can't ignore that just because he's a human being. And so watching him sort of wrestle with that was really great. And his character portrayal is so different than other things we've seen Boyega in, because normally Boyega is a fun, larger than life kind of character, like, Attack the Block or the Star Wars movies, where he is much more subdued as a guy who you're just watching go through this hell and watching it, secondhand almost, or going through it secondhand, which is a really powerful perspective. Again, I cannot say enough about Algee Smith in this movie. He was tremendous. From the moment you see him as a singer, this bright-eyed guy, to watching him go through seeing these riots happen, seeing these terrible things happen to his friend, seeing these terrible things happen to him directly, and then how he deals with the aftermath of that is incredible. Like, it is an incredible performance, and I would not be surprised if this film gets a Best Director nod, Best Picture, Best Actor for John Boyega, and Best Supporting for Algee Smith. At least it should. It's really great. And also, cinematography was incredible. Again, because it's Kathryn Bigelow, it feels like a war film in a lot of ways. And you know what? That's accurate. That's accurate to the times. I mean, the film also splices in real footage from the Detroit riots, which I thought was really powerful to give you a feeling of more roundness in the film. The third act is sort of the court trial after the incident, and again, it does such a good job of filling out the entirety of that story. There's kind of a feeling that it might be slightly too long. It's about 2 hours and 20 minutes, which it's a Bigelow film, so all of her films are about that time frame. But as much as I want to say it could have been 10 to 15 minutes shorter, losing that part of the trial or rushing that part of the trial would have been detrimental to the film. So as much as, wow, 2 hours and 20 minutes is a long film, it needed it. And it deserved to have it to give you the full arc of some of these characters and really the full arc of that story. All in all, Detroit, if you can't tell, Detroit is a 5 out of 5. I'd give it a 6 out of 5 if I could. It's wonderful. It's amazing how well Bigelow did. It's amazing how well the performances were. There are no weak points to this movie. This is the movie of the year. It's not just a good movie from a directing standpoint, or a well-written movie, or even a well-acted movie. It is all those things, but it's also an incredibly important movie just because of what's going on right now in the U.S., showing really the connection that things have changed for the better overall, but the fundamentals of the issues that we have with police brutality and how Black people specifically are seen by the police and their connection to law enforcement and why they are distrusting of cops. I can say that from a personal standpoint. All those underlying things are still there, and they've never been addressed and they've never been fixed. The problems with the police have fundamentally not been fixed overall, and they show that in the film, and you can absolutely see that in the modern day. And again, if you don't see those things, it's because you're either willfully ignorant or you're really not paying attention, because the film does a great job of presenting that. So again, great performances all the way around, great director, great writing, everything. Go see this movie. Absolute. In my opinion, it's the movie of the year so far. All right, guys. That's it for this episode of Coming Distractions. We will see you next time. If you check the feed right now, there's this review. There's also Atomic Blonde that Terrence and Tiara did, so check that out as well. If you're just listening to this on whatever podcatcher, make sure you also go to youtube.com/thenerdpocalypse, and you can watch the videos for these as well. So we will see you next time for another episode of Coming Distractions.